2:12 a.m., October 11, 2020, Gulf of Mexico, 40 nautical miles off Pensacola. On the scope, it's a single black sea drifting at 6 knots, no AIS, no radio riding low, like a mistake the ocean is trying to hide. Within 13 minutes, a P-8A Poseidon, working a wide area pattern, adds heat to the plot low IR signature. Asymmetric metal edges, wake characteristics that don't match a fishing hull. The verdict isn't shouted. It's graphed not a buoy, not a skiff, but a low-profile semi-submersible 35 FT long, riding the thermocline like a line of credit. Estimated cargo 3 metric tons. Street value $400 or $417 million if it lands enough to poison a state enough to fund a fleet of copycats. The ocean is glass black. Inside CIC, the air feels refrigerated radar sweep chat, laconic the slow heartbeat of discipline. The math is simple and brutal. If that hull slips beneath the layer surface, sensors will lose it. Airborne sensors will work harder, and every minute of delay widens the search ellipse by miles. 2:25 a.m. at Naval Air Station, Pensacola. The Joint Watch Desk lights like a metronome. Satellite cues coastal radar. The P-8A's IR track and a row of passive feeds begin to agree. The target profile, call it LPV for low-profile vessel, looks cartel-built, narrow beam, shallow draft, noise-reduced prop at 42 hertz, fundamental 7.4 knots under the layer, 62 FT estimated depth when fully awash. The picture rounds out 2 armed escort skiffs, each a fast RIB, with about 10 to 15 men operating in radio silence, except for brief encrypted pings on a fixed schedule every 11 minutes. Farther east, 90 nm on the chord line, a cargo ship moving at innocent speed shows course speed coincidences consistent with a handoff rendezvous. If it works, 3 tons become paint thinner or industrial solvent inside a supply chain that pretends not to notice. 2:40 a.m. The on-scene commander, Commander Rachel Decker, clears her voice and spends 5 words like currency shadow tracking. Weapons hold. Log everything. The package forms fast. USCGC Hamilton accelerates through 18, 22, 28 knots. USS Delbert D. Black, DDG 119, hangs back as C2 and umbrella. A MQ-9 Reaper slides into the overhead box. MH-60S, MH-60R Seahawks spin alert on the deck. An acoustic team pushes a machine learning filter that peels sea noise off the spectrogram in 6 minutes, locks the 42 hertz prop beat, and gives the watch a living number to breathe with. 3 agencies share one target: U.S. Navy, U.S. Coast Guard, and DEA Maritime. The kill chain doesn't shout. It tightens. 2:52 a.m. A geostationary sentinel, the Spears constellation, flags a thermal oddity on the projected rendezvous track, a merchant with a heartbeat out of place. The ocean stays quiet, but the data begins to sing. Space to sea, IR to acoustic, passive to active, every sensor layer starts pointing at the same moving dot. The order holds watch, don't attack. There is both power and risk in patience. The next 20 minutes will prove which one wins. 3:12 a.m. Hamilton goes fully passive sonar ears only while the MQ-9 paints a thin orange IR ribbon across black water every 90 seconds. The escorts whisper on and off, short encrypted bursts bouncing off a server fingerprinted to the Maracaibo region. On the surface, 2 larger cutters, 4 fast RABs, 1 MH-60, 1 MQ-9. In the cloud interagency routing, and a folder named LPV corridor that is starting to look too tidy to be coincidence. 3:28 a.m. The semi-sub dips vents, dips routine for ballast management, catastrophic for a crew that needs 1 clean photo. The Poseidon pilot waits for the sea to make a mistake and catches it white vapor against black glass, a half second of breath at the right range. Bearing made. Range updated. The box shrinks by half. 3:52 a.m. The sub surfaces for 6 seconds to purge and equalize. That is long enough. The commander's voice is the only noisy thing in the room. Execute phase delta. Hamilton 28 knots. 4 RIBs explode into spray. Boarding teams in lightweight armor count off M4 carbines, M110 marksman rifles, MK48 for serious problems, flex cuffs for everything else. Overhead, the MH-60 drops to a working orbit, GAU 21.50 cal covered, but quiet, powerful searchlight in reserve. You don't win the Gulf with bravado. You win it with angles and a camera that never blinks. 4:01 a.m. The escorts blink first. Red tracers rip a shallow arc and evaporate in mist. Hamilton's bridge barely flinches. The ship answers with 50 caliber warning fire well abaft the sterns of the escorts, the maritime equivalent of a full-throated don't. The Seahawk leans a spotlight through the spray and reads posture, not just guns, but hands, eyes, intent. When the escorts realize the helicopter is documenting rather than daring, their geometry softens. One peels wide. One tries to screen. The RIBs slip through the seam they create. 4:07 a.m. Boarding teams come alongside the LPV's shingled hull and climb a surface that was designed to reject hands and hope. The hatch spools a cough of chemical fog, fuel vapor solvent breath, the industrial tang of a billion-dollar black market. The team cracks the lid like a safe. Below a spiderweb of wire looms battery banks and pallets that look too neat for chance. What matters most is not the look, it's the weight. The numbers pour out 2,260 lb of processed methamphetamine, 480 liters of cocaine-based packaging that suggests a third compartment deeper aft. Estimated retail $417 million, depending on purity. A corridor of 8 to 8.5 million doses sitting in the dark because someone believed water is quieter than law. The scene remains professional. The weapons stay disciplined. The cuffs click like punctuation. One U.S. sailor takes a minor cut from sharp hardware and waves off a corpsman to stay in the stack. This is not a movie. It is procedure with a pulse. 5:47 a.m. aboard the USCGC Hamilton. What comes aboard does not look like salvage. It looks like capital. Hull plates carry a dull ram sheen, radar-absorbent paint that blurs the return at useful angles. Exposed fasteners are wrapped in carbon tape to smear sonar reflections. A compact NAV-02 autopilot talks to a minimalist SATCOM uplink. The log shows 2 prior routes in September that ended without incident. The power pack is a brick of lithium-ion, roughly 2,000 lb, good for 600 nautical miles at the quiet settings and far more when the hull is fully awash. The cargo bay hides behind a false bulkhead that looks like structure until you touch it and hear a sound the ocean does not make. There are receipts inside the machine, timestamps, course plots, a maintenance note in poor Spanish that proves a shop, not a shed, berthed this hull. The assessment on the whiteboard is not a flourish, not a one-off, a pre-series build for a cartel navy that prefers to be called logistics. 6:09:15 a.m. The analysis downstream is colder. At least a dozen sister hulls are inferred from part numbers and procurement chatter linked to Puerto La Cruz. Unit price $3 million each. Throughput potential Chamarcarja 40 metric tons per year across the corridor if only a fraction survive the crossing. That pencils to $5 billion in retail product. A log entry dated 09/22/2025 shows an endpoint ping where there should be a gap, a quiet confession that one run made it. The phrase on the ops board changes not incident, but LPV threat corridor. Commander Decker says the unsentimental thing. This isn't smuggling, it's an underwater arms race. Our answer must look like maritime air defense, not traffic enforcement. What locked down the night wasn't a lucky shot. It was a timeline running as smoothly as an engine that's been lovingly maintained. From the moment S-Spurs on orbit blinked the same thermal beat along the rendezvous lane, to the moment the last pair of cuffs clicked on USCGC Hamilton's deck, every sensor layer and every human showed up on cue, no one trying to be the hero. The P-8A Poseidon slid into its patrol box the way an adult walks into a boardroom, IR SAR reading wake geometry, the hull's vent trim cycle, and signal persistence on a cold sea clear enough to guide surface forces without tipping our hand. Every 90 seconds, a fresh image tightened the search ring by a few nautical miles. As Hamilton settled into a steady 28 knots, the anonymous black speck on the scope suddenly had heading speed and a story. Overhead, the MH-60 flew like a camera that knows the law: spotlight, cutting angles, lens holding distance. GAU-21 kept in a lawful deterrent posture rather than shouting for attention. The VHF script read like a drill. Everyone had memorized an initial hail, a safety advisory, a firm legal assertion of status, and a final instruction. When the two escort boats tossed tracer fire to drag our emotions into their whirlpool, all they got back was geometry and evidence. A clean intercept angle, constant safe separation faces, and firing grips captured in frame with the exact time of night. While metal and spray did their part, the invisible cast kept the tempo routers that synchronized timestamps across Navy Coast Guard and DEA Maritime. Chain of custody forms that traveled intact from deck plate to evidence room. ROE checkpoints that mark the precise rung where observe becomes compel. The order watch, do not attack. Wasn't hesitation, it was leverage trading early noise for late certainty, exposing an LPV corridor instead of just one boat. Even the data had discipline, FLIR frames with the time burned into the image GPS in the header EW logs, tag search or fire control acoustic clips, stamped with the 42 Hz, 18-second prop cadence at 62 FT proof, built to survive export translation and cross-examination without distortion. When Poseidon reported a fresh breath trail, Hamilton corrected course by only a few degrees. When the MQ-9 saw IR dim as the semi-sub tucked back under the thermocline passive sonar on Hamilton still held the heartbeat. When DDG-119 updated the fused picture, the Seahawk dropped a little altitude only to slide the screening boat out of the rendezvous box without nudging the situation into the red. The legal chain climbed the entire non-lethal ladder hail, show, record, repositioned before force was allowed into the frame, and when it arrived it was brief, bounded, and lawful. By the time the hatch came open, what beat the traffickers wasn't the weapons on our rails. It was the cadence of control unbroken video coordinates that agreed across all sources in a sequence of choices that refused every temptation toward cheap theatrics. On the action map, it was still only a few miles of dark water. On the interagency docket, it was procedure sealed tight, a repeating heat trace IR confirmation, a fixed 42 Hz acoustic lock, camera positive contact, and a sealed handoff of evidence. When the sea went quiet again, what remained was not the echo of gunfire, but the report, and it's the report that shuts a smuggling corridor, not a stack of sensational clips for the morning news. Supply chains or seismographs. By midday, marine insurance premiums along the northern Gulf notch upward. A paint and solvents importer gets a compliance call it wasn't expecting. A shipbroker in the Caribbean asks careful questions about deck-fitted containers. The seizure's dollar figure, $417 million, pops in headlines. But the quieter costs do the work. A cartel capex plan must be rewritten. A corrupt port's cash flow hiccups. A hyped corridor earns a scar. Risk math hates asymmetry. A $3 million hull can move $400 million in cargo if the seas are blind. The return is impossible to ignore. 1133, which is why the defender's answer cannot be a single sensor or a single hero. It must be coverage custody cadence. 8:00 a.m., October 12th, in Pensacola. Morning looks ordinary. That's the victory. On Hamilton's stern, the LPV rides on a tow like a rumor denied. The tally reads clean. One vessel interdicted contraband sees 260 lb meth, 480 L cocaine base. Multiple suspects detained, one minor U.S. injury treated and returned to duty. The biggest find isn't liquid or powder. It's Silicon Navigation History's factory tells and procurement breadcrumbs that sketch 12 more hulls on a whiteboard someone didn't expect to share. By October 13th, divers watch a scuttled shell at 60 or FT, while the legal team watches a chain of evidence that makes sense. On the bridge, Commander Decker studies the horizon and speaks for professionals everywhere. Let them come. We'll be early next time. The sea answers with silence, the kind that only follows discipline, never noise. Control isn't swagger, it's routine on demand. It's sailors who run the ladder like musicians running scales, so the night's ugliest moment still sounds like a metronome, not a solo. It's watchstanders who value reversibility, the option to step down a rung if the picture changes, because power is measured in choices preserved at minute 19. It's the OOD who whispers sea room before anyone says speed, the TAO, who can recite ROE in their sleep, and still checks the page by daylight, the junior sailor who wipes salt off a lens, because a clean frame is policy armor. Allies lean in where control is visible. Coalition memory as a weapon. Link 16 tracks archived EW diaries tagged drone POV stamped to the microsecond. Give a foreign minister receipts and they'll defend your actions in their own parliament. That doesn't happen by luck. It happens because data custody got line items, not leftovers. The first minute gets smarter. Expect AI-assisted pickets at ports micro-radars, mated to passive IR and acoustic tripwires, fused into a BMS that moves from detection to intercept in 30 seconds. Expect unmanned interceptors optimized for 5 to 20 Western AGL below classic SAM sweet spots. Expect perimeter microwave fences around critical key walls and river mouths, no plume, no drama, all effect. None of it will trend on social. All of it will keep ferries on time. There's an ethical dividend. When the targeting stack bakes in no-strike overlays, when the helicopter flies the witness profile until a red line is crossed, when ROE is read out loud the same way every day, civilian risk declines because predictability rises. We do not sanitize war. We bound it, make each coercive act legible, necessary, and as brief as the problem allows. Training is dull by design simulators where crews fight boredom and drift before they fight an enemy. Tabletops where lawyers sit next to gunners, and the argument is about sequence, not ego. Ask the gray-haired instructor what wins angles, not adjectives. Timelines, not tempers. Receipts, not rhetoric. Multiply the human returns. A port radio stays on the Weather Channel. A pilot boat keeps its coffee ring on the chart table because nobody flipped the day. A fisherman texts home he'll make dinner because patrol ships behave like neighbors, not headlines. These are not headlines. They are why we work. We didn't win because a helicopter roared or a caliber shouted. We won because a chain of ordinary, disciplined actions left the adversary with nothing glamorous to film and a lot of problems to finance. The measure of modern power is not how loud you are when you act. It's how quiet you can keep the world afterward. The sea goes quiet again, not peace the silence after a shout. In 72 hours, a chain of moves bends expectations, a drug submarine found without a chase, a network mapped without a spectacle, a corridor cut without a press conference. The United States didn't hunt a war, it shut down a threat. No land grabs, just time, reputation, and consequences reset to the boring settings that make commerce normal and mornings tolerable. So here's where I hand it to you. Was this victory about strength or a master class in discipline? If you had $1 to buy the next inch of safety, would you fund AI pickets, microwave fences, unmanned interceptors, or data custody that makes restraint undeniable? Tell me below. If clear-eyed, law-anchored analysis matters to you, like, subscribe, and share this with someone who cares about sea lanes more than sound bites. The next test will come. The job is to make it predictable, recorded, and over before dinner again.